Hello, everybody. As people are logging on, we're giving us a few minutes of time. And before we get started, thanks for joining. I'm Bryan O'Rourke. I'll be working with Rick today for him to share his insights on franchising trends for 2021. Again, thanks for being here.
See some familiar faces. Good to see everyone.
Great to see folks. Do you believe that it is December of 2020 already? My word.
I can't decide if this year's gone really fast or really slow. It depends. Depends on the day, right?
Yeah, 5 years ago it was January 2020.
That's right. Yep.
Long time ago.
Well, are we going to reveal today, Bryan, that we knew this thing was going to happen the whole time? We saw it coming in December of last year?
Well, I did actually, because I was closing a financial transaction in China, which we closed in January. And, you know,
so you brought it over here. You were the guy. You were the super spreader.
Don't tell anybody. Yeah, don't tell anybody.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, they were saying in the news today that they already had evidence that people were already in the United States with this in December. We just didn't know it. So maybe I was the guy, you know.
Yeah. So, I hope not, for your sake.
I certainly was in China. But I didn't get a call for anything, but who knows? Well, people are still joining us, Rick. Let's give them another 30 seconds or so, and
Sure.
we'll get started.
Sounds good.
You know, it's really interesting to go through this content, and so I know we'll be sharing some of this content later. I really enjoyed, you know, putting that together with you, Rick, in the last few weeks. Lots to think about. You know, franchising in fitness has been a big trend for the last several years, so I can't wait to have you delve into some of your insights.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's certainly something that we obviously are paying a lot of attention to since we pivoted to franchising.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's been a tough year for fitness, obviously. A lot of folks that are on this call understand that, but there's a lot of upsides, you know, that we'll talk about today, trends and other things that we see. So,
yeah, and it's good news. It's just going to be a little more time, but I think I agree with you. Well, let's get started. You know, for Rick, you know, and again, the audience, thanks for being here. Rick was kind enough to ask me to kind of help kind of have a conversation about this together. You know, I know a lot of people know your story, Rick. You've been an entrepreneur in the space for a long time, award-winning. We sat on the ACE Industry Advisory Council together and enjoyed that. I know your story, but how'd you get into franchising? Can you give people a little bit of background on yourself and your brand?
yeah, of course. So we started here. The concept actually started in 1992. Here I'm actually standing in the same building that we were in 1992 as a personal training brand. And, you know, we grew and grew and were able to fight a good fight and stay in business through some recessions and some things that we'll talk about today. And about 10 years ago, we started a licensing program, which is really like franchise light, if you think about it, right? We scaled that to a couple of thousand gyms worldwide. We're building some white labeled versions of what we do for some really big brands and decided, you know, instead of being the special sauce for everyone else's franchise, maybe we'll have a go at it on our own. And so we started franchising in the fall of 2019. We sold, you know, several units right out of the gate in the first 2 months, and then COVID hit and sort of, you know, derailed us a bit, but we're back on track. And I think for, you know, I'll flip that to you, Bryan, because I don't know, you know, obviously I know you, a lot of people that are in the industry know you, but you have a pretty big background, not only in the fitness industry, but in franchising in general. Do you, do you mind sharing that? I know that wasn't part of the script, but I'd love to hear your background.
Yeah, you know, I started franchising in the early 80s with a guy named Al Copeland, who's the founder of Popeyes Fried Chicken, and became his, you know, chief financial officer at a very young age and worked in franchising quite a bit. Then went on, you know, grew that brand with him and a big team of people to $1 billion company. We had both the churches and Popeyes brand, which ultimately became AFC, based in Atlanta. And then went to work with several of the brands over the course of my career. Started with Smoothie King, actually as a stakeholder in the business, and grew that from 20 some locations to hundreds. And now it's an international brand. And then we did it with several other brands, a regional chain of coffee shops, I was one of the original people involved with Moe's Southwest Grill as well, and have advised a lot of franchise brands over the years. And franchising has changed a lot. It's been a huge. If you look back in the '80s and imagine what it is today, I don't think anybody could have foreseen how large of a fingerprints or footprint it has had on all kind of industries. So, it's quite a rise. It's great to see you go through this journey as well with your team, Rick. So before we get into your trends, because you've got 5 great trends that I know you're going to want to talk about. You had mentioned earlier about what has happened in the recent past with fitness and brands in general. You want to touch on a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. So, and we've actually been in business through both of these hiccups, if you will, right? Market turns, whatever you want to refer to them as. So one was around 9/11, right? The other one was obviously the 2000, 2009 or 2008, really, stock market crash. And really fitness has grown through all of those tough times. So if you look at what happened even in the more financially challenging times, which is 2007, 2008, overall membership did drop, not significantly though, based on what happened in some other industries. And you'll see revenues overall, stayed pretty steady. So you could see maybe some folks that were driving a higher revenue per member were able to survive. But if you look at demand for fitness overall over this time period, even in very, very challenging times, the demand remains. So we're going to see something very similar here. Now, listen, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and be Pollyanna about the situation. It's been tougher on fitness. I would say for anyone listening, unfairly so, right? That we get lumped in with bars and restaurants and that type of thing, but it has been tougher on fitness than others. That being said, the demand for fitness is still in place. There's still some things at play here that show us that fitness is going to be big. Coming out of this, it's going to be, again, a little bit like the roaring 20s is how I've heard it described from economists, even infectious disease specialists saying when this is over, people are going to come running, right, to get out of the house and get back together. And we feel the same way. And certainly brick and mortar fitness is sitting in a really good place, coming out of this, and the demand is still there. That's the thing, right? Just because, right now we're in a temporary, setback, if you will, people still want it. So we'll be ready. So what have you seen, Bryan? You've been in the industry that same amount of time. So let's talk about more like 07, 09. You were heavily involved in the industry even at that time. What did you see?
Well, similar, the underlying drivers are still there, right? I think the pandemic has been a little more significant than those, of course, because of its unique impact that you mentioned. Looking at the industry stuff, either from Europe Active or URSA or, any of the, Fitness Australia, any of the different organizations, depending on their geographies, we're anticipating, 20 to as much as 30% of rooftops being closed, which is going to be an opportunity in the next year. But this is a little more significant, but demand is, I agree with you. I think the roaring 20s is a good analogy. And as you mentioned, you can see this is from, tracking of mobile devices from March 1st to April 15th compared to the beginning of the year. And you can see the kind of impact that some of these industries have experienced from COVID, right, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, brick and mortars have taken a beating. There's no doubt about it, right? I mean, we all know if you look at what's happened to brands like Peloton and some of the digital brands, just as a knee-jerk reaction to what's going on, stock's really high. You guys probably saw, I even posted something where, the announcement of the virus came out and it tanked temporarily, Peloton stock by 25%. So really what we're looking at for the future moving forward, and who did well even during this time, were people that had both assets, right? Yeah. So you have a brick and mortar footprint, but you also have the digital assets to be able to pivot quickly. And we saw this in our corporate clubs. We even disclosed in our item 19, which is financials for franchising, for those of you guys that don't know, what happened to our revenue during item 19. And we were still, 15 points better than an average studio during good times, right? Studio brand, because we had the digital assets to pivot from almost all brick and mortar to literally all digital. Once we were open, back to brick and mortar, but now more of a hybrid, right? We still have people that are consuming what we offer, coaching services, digitally and brick and mortar. And I think that's really what we're looking at moving forward. I don't think the new normal is never leave your home. It's just not the way that we're wired as humans yet. AI hasn't caught up to be able to replace the human experience just yet. So I don't think that's where it's going long term. So there is this pent up demand, right? Ultimately, and it's a little bit of what we talked about, whether it's just a knee jerk to getting out of the house, to get out and about, but there is going to be a need for a hybrid model moving forward, but brick and mortar is still going to be relevant. And one thing you didn't mention, Bryan, in your background, you're the president of what, the Fit Tech Council? Am I stating that correctly?
Yeah,
so
that's
what
right.
are you guys seeing? I mean, obviously you've got a different lens on technology overall. You have strong opinions about overvaluation of Peloton stock and things like that.
Yeah.
But what are you seeing right now? Because I have had that question asked to me as a potential brick and mortar franchise, like, are brick and mortars going to come back at all? Are they even going to exist? Is this going to be 100% digital? I'd love to get your take on that.
No, I think digital, it's going to continue to expand in its outreach, but as Morgan Stanley's research and other research shows, putting aside the pandemic and the shutdowns and other cautionary efforts by people to hold the spread of the virus back, the reality is that people want mixed experience. They want to have in-store, in-club, in-studio experience, and they want the convenience of digital. So truly hybrid models, a term I coined years ago, is going to become a mainstream component of delivery, and that's thankfully what Alloy is considered in their dynamic, which is, I think, a great positive. We'll see other brands do that as well. And further to the point, when you look at this with respect to, what are the areas of growth in franchising, personal services, which, professional fitness services would fall into, a lot of growth there, and a lot of people, as customers procuring services, expecting that digital physical interaction, a la Apple retail, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So when you look at this graph, Bryan, this was what was projected to happen in 2020, right? And we saw the most growth in personal services, which certainly that speaks well for me. I was excited to see this when we dug into this research, because obviously personal training is personal service. So, the most traction was seen in personal services, and the projections for 2020, until you came back with a virus from China, thank you, were that we would continue to see that growth, right? And even though there's been, again, a temporary interruption, there's no reason for us to believe that won't still be the fastest growing segment, right, in franchising overall.
Yeah, I agree with that. And as you're going to dive into the 5, key trends we'll touch on today, some of this will be echoed through more specific information. So Rick, we talked about this, and you would come up with these 5 kind of drivers to really look through the lens of 2021. You want to just touch on them real quick before we dive in?
Yeah, so, these are simple. We'll dig into each one a bit, but obviously being in the fitness industry is rewarding, right? I think everyone wants to do good, and everyone wants to make money. Everybody wants return on investment, and franchising is a great way to leverage, right, to partner to do that. But at the same time, it's really nice to be able to put your head on the pillow at night and know that you're making a difference in the world. And I can't think of an industry that would be better suited for that than fitness overall, right? We talked about the big opportunities that are going to be available post-COVID. There is this culling, right? You could almost consider it righting the market to a certain degree, and the good operators are still going to be around. So there's going to be certainly a greater need, right? A greater demand and less product, right? So there'll be less gyms there, but the ones there, they need to be relevant. They're going to have a really big opportunity. Strong market for certain concepts. So, we're going to talk about this, but moving forward, again, it goes to number 4, you really have to have a focused brand. So you have to understand what your concept is. How are we going to be viewing healthcare, things like that moving forward, and how's that going to impact the fitness industry? Are you aligned with that? Are you still the six-pack abs brand, or are you more preventative healthcare brand, right? Those things are going to be super important. And then ultimately, what's really important, I think, something that up until this point maybe hasn't been spoken about enough, are unit economics. Are your units or your stores or your gyms, are they making money? And what does that look like? And we'll talk a little bit about how we do that and why we know that we can win, in this regard. But fitness is trendy, right? And there can be lots of smoke and mirrors around it. So you gotta be really careful not to jump on the latest trend without digging into, like, how does this thing make money in year 2, 3, 4? Right. So those are 5 as we see them.
Yeah. So, you've been an entrepreneur for many years, right? And I know your story. Hopefully a lot of people have read your articles and heard you speak. And you said that it's rewarding. And it really is a personal kind of satisfaction thing in many regards, right, Rick?
No, 100%. Listen, this will this speaks to exactly that, right? So 70% of people want, to achieve some work-life balance. So it's not just that fitness that you do good, but you can set up a great lifestyle around fitness, right? It's not like you're in a tech startup where if you don't work, I think what Elon Musk said, if you don't work 90 hours a week, you're never going to make it type of thing. It's not that, thankfully, right? 94% of people said they would do it again. 55% felt less stressed. So overall, people that get into self-employment, right, of some sort are typically happier than people that work for companies, especially in this day and age. Long gone are the days when you work for a company, you get a gold watch and a pension and you ride off into the sunset. There's a lot less security in big companies than there ever was. So, most people are willing to bet on themselves if they have some kind of a concept or something, a partner, if you will, AKA franchise. They're willing to bet on themselves more so than they are, their big company. So
Yeah.
in general, it looks really good moving forward. And these are just some real great examples of that, right?
Yeah.
When work has meaning, we talked about it. What better industry to be in that has meaning than literally changing the lives of your customers, literally, right? And you can see it, put your hands on it, hear the stories, right? See the people's faces. And overall, just, being happy with what you do. And it sounds really corny because you say, oh, it's not about being happy. It's about business unit metrics and things like that. But that's not true, because as we're stating here, being happy will make you successful in some ways. At the end of the day, the work has to be done either way. But I can tell you, it's a hell of a lot easier to get up and work hard and do that work when you enjoy what you're doing and you know that the end result of what you're doing is really changing the world.
That's right. And lifestyle, and how that, business opportunity connects with the lifestyle people want to live is going to be an increasing differentiator in franchise opportunities. We already saw this trend occurring before. In my past experiences with franchising and having a background in food, there's a lot of, serving a lot of Popeye's butter-filled biscuits isn't actually the best thing for the world. So when you are doing these other things and you're doing it in a spirit, I mean, I've been in your beautiful location in Alpharetta in that area, and just a different vibe. And when people are going to work in that every day and seeing the connectivity with their clients and happiness, that's a big differentiator. And I think more and more and more when people look at business opportunities, that's going to be a differentiator for them. You want to make some money, but boy, you really want to feel good about, what you're doing, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we always talk about who, not how, right? It's a big concept that we believe in as a company where, I mean, that could be like, who, meaning like who can help me create this lifestyle, and if you looked at us as a company, as a franchise, and about who can give me this freedom and allow me to help people and change these lives, that's really important, right? And if you do want that freedom and you don't want to work 1 million hours a week and you actually want to do something you enjoy when you are putting in those hours, fitness is a really good opportunity to do so.
Yes. And then earlier you alluded to this, that, it's the roaring 20s that are coming, right? And we've heard about the vaccines and what's going on. We have a few pieces here. Why don't you articulate on these, please?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's early, and of course, talking about this stuff just sends people in a tizzy for the most part, but this is just high level what we know. This isn't, don't hold me to this, and don't drink Clorox bleach or whatever else might come out. It's like, right? But yeah, we're seeing the vaccine be relatively effective so far. So far, things look promising. And again, you saw the bump in the stock value of airlines and other industries that are drastically affected negatively, right, by COVID. You saw the immediate bump just at the announcement that there may be a vaccine coming, right? And so we're thinking the trials, based on all the evidence we have, will conclude. And McKinsey & Company, by the way, who produced the study, I mean, if you guys know anything about McKinsey & Company, it's one of the top companies for basically researching and pooling data and putting together these type of reports. So high level, but consider the source. It's pretty good information, right? Herd immunity happens at around 60%, something like that. We'll get there. Virus will certainly help with that as well.
Yeah. And then we see further on McKinsey & Company is the optimism, kind of that roaring 20s thing. And I think they just maybe yesterday refreshed these statistics. And this is surveys that occurred not that long ago. We had the link, but it's that positivity that connects to this economic rebound we're anticipating.
Yeah, 100%. So I don't think there's anyone that I talk to, probably no one on this webinar, that doesn't feel like when this is over that things are going to turn for the better, right? It feels like it's lasted forever. It's been a relatively short period of time. Once this vaccine comes out or we reach this herd immunity in one form or form, shape, or the other, it's certainly going to be a huge upturn. So we're going to see a huge demand for fitness, and we're going to talk about like maybe more of the wellness side of it, and what that's going to look like as opposed to, you know, young, fit, you know, kind of idea. Lower rents is a big deal. We're already starting to see that. At first, kind of landlords just kind of held on because they didn't know what was going on. Now, you know, we've got franchises in this stage now. We're starting to see landlords negotiate a little bit more than they were. Certainly the people increase in awareness of getting healthy. You know, one of the biggest predictors of COVID, as everyone's heard, has been obesity. And I know that's a massive problem to overcome. And it probably is it's gonna take more than a personal training brand to do it. But I think in my little corner of the world, I can feel good about what we're doing. And I think for those relevant, smart consumers, they're going to see us as a solution for that, right? They're going to want to lower their risk factors as much as possible. Yeah. And then overall right now, money's good. I mean, it's a little bit harder to get money right now, but the type of person that we're trying to attract to the franchise that's financially qualified, they can get money, and money is so cheap. Never a better time to leverage someone else's dollars to go make money, right?
Yep. There's going to be a lot of opportunity, and with also the pent-up demand on top of the fact that you're going to have this culling. I just think that fitness franchise opportunities in 2021 are going to be very, very big. And that comes down, you know, you have this market opportunity that's going to open up, this roaring 20s, but not all concepts are going to benefit from it equally, right?
Yeah, 100%. So Deloitte, obviously another, like McKinsey and Company, just top notch for providing data and reporting for us. So we really are, you know, predicting that we're going to see a shift from, again, fit for the sake of being buff, or fitness for fit people. Like, you know, I think Graham's on this call, and we used to joke at ACE about, like, you know, fitness clubs are like country clubs for people that like to lift things, right? And we would ha-ha that. And really, through his organization, through us, what we're trying to do is really move this to more preventative healthcare overall, right? So again, instead of measuring, you know, illness, and this is something as a society that we've done poorly, right? Can we get ahead of this a little bit? I think something like this virus, while right now it's just hole up a little bit of hysteria, when we come out of this in retrospect, I think we're going to say, look, this is an opportunity for us to get on top of our health before something like this comes up. It's going to be even more important. And the significant market moving forward, we talked about this, is the 50 plus. I mean, we're going to talk more about it. I mean, I'm 51, so, you know, I joking that it's not old. I know it's old for some. Maybe when you're 20, when you're 50 is ancient, but when you're 50, it doesn't feel old. But when you look at the metrics, and I know we're going to dig into this a little bit, but the, you know, the disposable income and all the things that come along with this, and you just have an intelligent market, right? That's going to look at their health and wellness, and they're going to want to live longer. I think if a child born today has a chance, like a 40% chance of making it to a centurion, right? To making it more than 100 years. So we're going to see more and more awareness, you know, not only from brands like ours, but just in general. You're going to see more stories and more rhetoric around longevity and health overall.
Absolutely. Health preservation and wealth preservation are the two key drivers for people once they get in their 50s. And as we know, you know, the net worth of people who are in their 60s and older are 12 times that of the millennial segment. So the money is really in that category, and they're the motivation along with it. And it's not just that. When we look at context, it's also you know, competitive positioning in this growth opportunity. It's also this bifurcation of the market that we've seen hit fitness now consistently for more than a decade, where you have this kind of split. You have the low end, you know, budget, you know, very austere kind of basic service model. And then you have very sophisticated personalized offerings of, you know, highly specialized services. And the concepts that are on that high end, I think, are going to do a lot better. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, listen, whether you like it or not, there is a bigger discrepancy, right, in incomes. I mean, and you're seeing the wealthy, you know, by definition, getting more wealthy, right? So if you look at the 50 plus crowd, holds 70% of the nation's disposable income. Right. You know, only 5 to 10% on average marketing dollars is what they're estimating are actually spent directly to that crowd. So when you think about you know, why that is, it's because no one feels old. But there is a magic to that, right? You can market relevantly as long as you go premium and you don't go old. You're going to speak to these folks, and these are the same. This is the same group, Bryan, that spends more money on adventure travel, right? Like, you want to take your family skiing to Aspen. Well, guess what? You're going to be a hell of a lot more suited to do so if you're in pretty good shape, right? So there's all these other reasons, health included, right, and lifestyle, and the financial wherewithal to do so, that this particular market is very relevant moving forward, more so than it was even before the pandemic. And we were already there, right? In 2018, we were already moving here.
Yep. No, you're so right. You're so right. And that's why I think this segues nicely into your fourth big trend that you brought up when we were talking about this, which is the difference between being a highly focused brand versus trying to be everything to everybody. And the advantages that a concept like Alloy would have in that regard, because, you know, for a lot of reasons that you all know well. Can you opine on that for us?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it a little bit. You know, you've got the low end clubs, and they may do okay, right? Because you're at $10, and maybe in your apartment, you know, the person that would buy that type of fitness offering doesn't have the ability to buy a Peloton and put it in their home, or whatever the things are, right? But on the other end of the spectrum, right, you've got high end. And I wouldn't want to be stuck in the middle, is all I can say right now. That would be a tough spot to be in. Trying to be a one-stop shop for everyone is not the way to go moving forward. So if you looked at those metrics that we just talked about, right, health as an initiative, disposable income, right, where are you going to go? You know, the bottom end is busy and crowded. So the top end, not as much, right? So if you can create something that is built for 50 plus, that feels more premium, not old, right? So you're not speaking to, you know, silver sneakers or something along those lines. You know, I think you're gonna land on it. And when we look at the things, you guys, the advantages that these specific brands, and of course these speak more to Alloy, I think, than anything else. I think the big one that stands out to me here is accountability. At the end of the day, in this day and age, to come out and claim that you have the best workouts is a bit of an empty claim, right? Because as we all know, there's a lot of ways to exercise. There really is. What's really important is that you're a coaching brand, that you're seen as an expert in your field. And I can tell you through, you know, the clubs that we work with and our Alloy clubs that we have in our franchise system, we become that hub of health and fitness, right? We're directing, you know, towards nutrition. We're directing towards maybe even other brands, like, hey, I want to go and grab a cycling thing. Where do you think I should go? And so it's all about us holding folks accountable to all of those other things. There's really no other advantage, right? Workouts can be purchased digitally, by the way, right? So what's the difference? Why would you make an appointment, go see a coach, as opposed to just grabbing a YouTube workout? Well, you need accountability. People aren't going to do it on their own. I mean, how many times over the years have we heard people say in our brands, you know what I love about this place? I just come in and put my keys down. I don't have to make yet another decision. By the way, this crowd that we're servicing, they're pretty successful, right? And you don't have 70% of the nation's income if you're not a pretty successful person typically. So they have decision fatigue just like everyone else. So what's great about going in, put your keys down, you've got this trusted source. It you know, increases loyalty. We talk about our retention rates and how good those are in the industry. And that's really our big advantage, you know, moving forward. Is like, this is our crowd. Everything we do is going to speak to them. It's going to be premium. It's going to be all about accountability. And at the end of the day, it's got to be simple. You can't do all things and scale it. So if you say, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is who we service, right? And you can work really hard. And as we know, simple's not easy, right? I did a whole presentation. Steve Jobs has said this, you got to clean up your mental space and everything. But once we deliver this thing and it's simple, that means it's scalable. We wouldn't have even come to franchising if we couldn't scale the heck out of this thing.
Yep. And I've seen it in my years in franchising. The ones that were successful were the ones that had their hands around this. The ones that had a lot of challenges were the ones that didn't. It's really a big differentiator. And then the fifth thing that you and I talked about over the last few weeks is unit economics. You know, everybody wants to think about making money. You know, what franchises are better than others when we look at 2021? But it's not as simple as just that, you know, because you can make some money in the near term, but long term, and the way people look at it or evaluate it, as you said the other day, Rick, what lens they put on this is really crucial when they're evaluating franchises. And more, you know, sophisticated franchise prospects, they need to consider, you know, a new way of really evaluating this well, right?
Yeah, and you know, I found this probably to be most surprising, Bryan, when we entered this space, right? Yeah. Because in the licensing and the consulting that we were doing, these are conversations that we have on the daily, right? Which is, what's the lifetime value of a customer, you know, and how does that relate to your business model? And ultimately, what I've discovered is there's not a lot of discussions around that. Fitness is very trendy. It can be very smoke and mirrors. You know, you can open a new hot concept. It can go gangbusters for, you know, 8 to 12 months. And the real question that people should be asking is, what does this thing look like in year 2, 3, 4? That's the smart question, right? So when you look at something like personal training that has accountability, that has a targeted market, like we do at Alloy, we have a lifetime value of a customer of around $10,000. Well, if the lifetime value of a group training brand is like $600 or $700, and you start saying, okay, well, why does that matter if you've got volume here? Well, this is directly tied to customer acquisition cost. We're all in the same markets, right? And yes, we're chasing different avatars, but by the way, some of our 50 crowd wanders into these brands misplaced. They maybe don't stay, right? But they wander in there. So we're all sort of chasing this fitness crowd. And if you don't have a high lifetime value of a customer, you can't even spend enough on marketing to stay alive, right? So I would just implore anyone that's looking at any fitness franchise to start asking, what is this thing like year 2, 3, 4 down the road, right? And don't get too enamored with the latest, greatest and the smoke and mirrors, because man, staying power and lifetime value, those are the type of questions that you should be asking. So it all goes back to retention level, how much profit margin are you making, lifetime value of a customer, and then again, ratio of investment to revenues, right? So if you can make a relatively low investment and get a great return on your investment, not only in year 1, but obviously you get a return on your investment over the long haul. Franchising agreements are normally 10 years. So you really want to sign that if it's only hot for 2. Yep. So ask these questions, you guys. And these are, if you're in the industry already, you get this. But yeah, this is just the area that I would probably spend an hour talking about this, Bryan, because I'm so passionate about it, because it's just not talked about. And I was really surprised. I think I brought this up to you when we were putting this together. It's like, why is this not being discussed? And you're like, I don't know, it's just not. So what's your take on it?
It's a thing, having developed franchises for many years, I've sold franchises, development rights, all these type of things. It's a mindset, a lot of people, what is their motivation? I think buyers have become, or investors, prospects have become more sophisticated, but still there's a tendency for people to be enamored with the shiny new object. And it's because it's sexy, and people like that sometimes, versus looking at what is time tested, fundamentally good business practice. Because you're right, these are long-term business relationships, and you have to know that something has teeth, and it has sustainability. It's a real business model. And even in businesses that we own, and I've advised a lot of brands globally on the business side, not even in franchising. And this is really taking a longer term view. And if you believe in the tenets that we set forth earlier on, the healthcare dynamics, the demand for health services, the kind of personas that you would be seeking in various franchises, and why, those underlying dynamics, and you're going to look at, these opportunities in different ways. Not everyone does that. And I'm like you, I would really encourage people to take that kind of a lens to it, because that's the lens you need to use.
And I think we've both seen people who maybe didn't do that, Bryan. And by the time they get to me as a consultant or you, it's too late and they're hurt, right? Even on the brand level for you, more so for me, the operators. But it's a shame to see that. And of course, when we set out to do this, we weren't going to do that. And I wouldn't have come to market without even having these discussions originally. So. I think it's a real advantage for us. I think it's how we win, honestly, in the long run.
Yep, I agree with that. I wholly agree with that. That was a great recap, Rick. So you want to go through again, you started with entrepreneurship and how people want meaning, they want the lifestyle, they want the freedom, they want to have purpose. That's a big thing. And you directly speaks to your own experience in the industry space, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I love what I do. I loved it at the unit level when I was in college and opened my first gym and worked on the floor as a coach. And I love it now, right? I love scaling it, helping other people make money, and them helping their members, right? And changing their lives. I mean, Stronger Together, which, by the way, we finally, looks like we're going to get the trademark in that eventually in fitness, which is great. But we really believe in that. It's business to business and it's business to consumer. We have a giving structure to our business as well. So the more we grow, the more money we give. It really is what it's all about. And that to me is what gets me up in the morning still.
Yeah. Yep. And then of course you touched on the big opportunities post-COVID, the roaring 20s, and how, strong market growth is going to be there, but for the right concepts, they're going to have an advantage.
Yep. Just hold on. If you're already in the space, hold on, right? Like, and look to simplify. If you have a big footprint, you're doing a lot of things, I would look to shrink it and pick a vertical that you think you can win in. If you're not in the fitness space, call us. We'd love to help you.
Yeah. And then focusing, so you have an edge, for all the reasons we touched on. And then those unit economics, how people need to look at those opportunities, seek the fundamentals. Don't look for what's sexy at the moment. Look at those underlying fundamentals, right, Rick?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, you can be sexy and make money. That's what I shoot. That's what I would aim for. I'm looking for the win-win, right? I want to be sexy and make some money.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I don't know if we have time to take some questions. If people can we see them in the chat box?
Yeah, I think we can. Let me see. If you guys have any questions, shoot them out there. If not, we're going to make this available, you guys. So we're recording and we will have it available to everyone. So we'll post it up. We'll probably throw it on YouTube, I would assume, and then we'll post it around some different areas. Have it on the website as well.
Yeah, it's great to see the attendees. We had quite a number of people, so that was very nice for everyone to come around and spend some time. We didn't abuse them too much, Rick. You know, some of these webinars last for an hour and a half, and you know, people.
Well, I think people are suffering from a little bit of screen fatigue. So if we can get our main point across and just show some trends and kind of how we see things and how things shaping up in 2021, I think that's good enough. So I'll just say thanks to everyone. Bryan, thanks for coming on with me. It's been great to go back and forth.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
You as well. So appreciate you guys. If you have any questions, obviously our information is down here, alloyfranchise.com. If you just reach out through the contact form there, I'll certainly get that. But listen, thanks a million, you guys. Appreciate you. A lot of the industry folks in here that we know already. Thanks a million. If you're not, reach out if we can help. And we will talk to you next time.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, guys.